Russian President Vladimir Putin has announced a unilateral Easter truce for the war in Ukraine. In a televised address, Putin said the pause in fighting would begin this evening and last through Sunday. He said Russian troops should be, quote, ready to repel violations and provocations by Ukraine. Meanwhile, Kyiv said drones have been spotted above the city. And Ukraine's President Zelenskyy called the truce, quote, another attempt by Putin to play with human lives. Let's hear some of what Putin had to say.
Guided by humanitarian considerations, today, from 6 p.m. to midnight, from Sunday to Monday, the Russian side declares an Easter truce. I order all military actions to cease for this period. We assume that the Ukrainian side will follow our example.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy posted this reaction on social media. He wrote, "Drones in our sky expose Putin's true attitude towards Easter and human lives." DW correspondent Nick Connolly is in the Ukrainian capital and joins us now. Nick, it's been just an hour since the ceasefire took effect. What are you seeing and hearing? Are there still drones in the sky? Is there a general feeling that the ceasefire is being observed?
So the drones were over Kyiv sometime after Putin made that announcement, but they haven't been in the air since 6 p.m. local time, which is the beginning of this ceasefire as laid out by Vladimir Putin. I think there's a huge amount of skepticism here in Ukraine. Firstly, about whether this is even going to last till midnight, Sunday to Monday. In the past, after 2014, you had lots of situations where the Russians would then claim a Ukrainian provocation and fire back. And even if it does last that long, there's very little belief that this will be extended. This is seen as basically a bit of PR from Vladimir Putin to show that he is open to Donald Trump's initiatives for peace. He hasn't been giving the Trump White House very much in the way of red meat. Recently, he's been making lots of conditions for any kind of longer-term deal. So this is just seen as a bit of PR. And as I said, Ukrainians, people here in Kyiv, were reading about this ceasefire and hearing those Russian drones in the skies above them around 5 p.m. local time. So this is not something that seems very credible for now. We've tried to reach out to people on the front lines, to soldiers. For now, we're still waiting for responses. The ones that did get back to us didn't seem very convinced. We don't have more information yet about whether or not really there is still fighting going on, but certainly there is a huge deal of skepticism. And I think there's a sense that the outside world really wants this to be true, but people here on the ground don't believe that this is actually going to happen.
Nick, I want to pick up on something you were just saying. This, of course, comes just a day after the U.S. Secretary of State hinted that the U.S. may abandon the peace talks if no progress is in fact achieved. What are people there making of the timing?
So certainly this is seen, I mean, it's obviously Easter as well, so that gives Putin the kind of option to portray himself as this big Christian kind of benefactor doing something humane. But certainly there is a sense here that while Ukraine has been playing along with the Trump White House and their initiatives and basically said, we will go along with any ceasefire deal, be that at sea or in the air, the Russians have been piling on those additional demands, additional conditions. And so they were potentially worried, the Russians, that Trump would lose patience with them. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of evidence yet that Trump is willing to put pressure on Russia, but certainly there is a sense that Putin, while giving himself time and not wanting to be forced to kind of have his hand forced by the American side, did want to make some kind of gesture towards Donald Trump. There is a sense here that if this goes on, this war continues, this is in Vladimir Putin's interests. His army is very slowly, but is advancing Ukraine, and that he just wants to kind of basically drag this out and carry on fighting.
The subtext of much of what you're saying, especially when you think about the Ukrainian psyche, is skepticism. But is there any hope there at this hour that Ukrainians, among Ukrainians, that the truce might be extended at all?
I think it seems unlikely. We have had this kind of initiative in the past that hasn't worked over Christmas, Orthodox Christmas in 2023, so just kind of short of the first anniversary war. That didn't go any further. Everything we've seen more broadly, we've seen the rhetoric coming out of Moscow, is that anything short of basically Ukraine becoming a client state, of Russia's becoming basically another Belarus, is something that Vladimir Putin just doesn't want to accept. It's not just about NATO membership anymore. It's not just about the EU or Ukraine's defense cooperation with other nations. This is the broader thing of kind of Vladimir Putin's role in world history as he sees it, and his commitment to basically subjugate Ukraine. That is the kind of basic position that is seen here by most Ukrainians when you talk to them about it. And when they listen to the kind of things coming out of Moscow, they basically feel that very little has changed since 2022 and that Vladimir Putin still thinks he can get basically everything he set out to get back then.
DW's Nick Connolly in Kyiv, as ever. Many thanks. For more, I am now joined by DW Russia analyst Konstantin Egart in Vilnius. Konstantin, what more do we know about the announcement?
Well, really not much, Michael. It's a very short announcement in which Putin also took the time to congratulate those soldiers who profess Christianity, as he put it, as well as the whole world with Easter. So essentially it is very much, I would say it looks, I would say slightly medieval. It's like a Christian monarch suddenly giving peace to the subjects. And I think that's what was intended, but no more details are available, at least as of now.
The Ukrainian leader Zelenskyy, of course, says Russian drones in Ukrainian skies show true Moscow's attitude. What do you make of the timing?
Well, the timing is in some ways typical Putin. The United States administration was pushing him for some kind of ceasefire, truce for weeks now, and he was mum. And then suddenly, he himself announces it. That's typical Putin in the sense that even when he's cornered or even when his position is not wonderful, he wants to present that everything emanates from him. He's always taking the initiative. He is the number one. He is doing everything. And I'm absolutely certain, Michael, that from these moments on, the Russian propaganda, both internally and externally, will be spinning the message that Putin did it while Zelenskyy didn't. He is the peacemaker. But in fact, I also think there is one significant element to all that. We've heard Secretary of State Rubio saying that there is very short time left before the American administration essentially walks away from attempts to arrange some kind of peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. And I think that Putin is slightly worried about it because he doesn't know what will follow. So this is like trying to hook in the US administration, trying to keep its attention, trying to keep it in the game. And that's one, I think, very small indication that Putin still expects something from this interplay between him and Donald Trump, and of course, to some extent, Vladimir Zelenskyy. But so far, I see it first and foremost of all as a very short, the ceasefire will end at midnight Sunday, very short propaganda move that is supposed to present Putin in a very positive light.
Our thanks, as always, to DW Russia analyst Konstantin Egart.